welcome to HERPath, the podcast for successful, busy women looking for purpose, health, and happiness. Today, we are going to be talking about relationships. And so I love this topic. It is changed my life the way our teacher, Brooke Castillo at the Life Coach School, has taught us about relationships. And so I'm so excited to share it with you. So when you think about relationships, we are really confused about how they actually work. We are under the impression that we have control over the world and that other people need to behave in a certain way so we can feel good. And so because of this, we have so many rules for our relationships. And then we stop experiencing them and we're trapped in our expectations of how the relationships should be. But really, in reality, our relationships are simply our thoughts about the other person. I want to let that sink in for a second. Like, our relationships are simply thoughts about that person.
What if I say yes? Because when I first heard that, I was like, no, that is a bunch of BS. Because when my husband pisses me off, when I told him 5 times to clean the dishes, because I worked hard on making that meal, and he doesn't do it, it's his fault. It's his fault that I'm getting mad and that I'm really getting on his case, and that he's disappointing me in our relationship because he is not, he's not following through with the things that I told him to do.
I love that you brought this up, Gabby, because I am going to be talking about that in just a moment. You had what is called a manual for how your husband should behave in order for you to be happy. And
he should make me happy. Like, that's the whole thing, right? He should make me happy, but he fails miserably all the time. Why? He should know. He should know. He's known me for 26 years. He should know.
That's so awesome. That in fact, I feel like that exact statement is a little bit later down here in our conversation.
So we're coming back to that. You're not off.
We'll wrap around to that in a moment. And but yeah, I mean, yeah, like the first time I heard that too, it kind of blows your mind. Like, what? Like, no, it's not about how I think about this person. But let me give you an example. So I have a friend, her name is Amy. I absolutely love her. She's so fun. She's super awesome. She's smart. She's funny. She's loyal and trustworthy. And think about there are probably people in this world that do not love her as much as I do, or maybe even dislike her. And so how is it possible that for the same person, there can be different experiences about her? So not everybody that knows her is in love with her like the way that I am, right? And so different people are going to have a completely different relationship with Amy because of their thoughts about her. And why is that? She hasn't changed. She's still Amy. She's still the same person. It's because their relationship with her is dependent on their thoughts about her, not her.
But does she act differently with other people? Like, is she different with everyone? Like, are there some people that she's nicer to, that she's more,
Oh, she's Amy. She's Amy. She's amazing. She's wonderful. She's awesome.
So how is it that you love her so much and, other people have a completely different impression?
Answer that. What is that? What is that difference?
It's the manual.
It's the thought.
Everybody has a different manual about how people should act towards them. So what Beth loves about Amy, Gabby, it might really annoy you because you have a different manual.
So let's jump
Okay.
into manuals,
Yeah.
right? We might as well jump right into what a manual is. So a manual, most of us have, it's what's called an operation manual, just like your car has a manual, or all of these wonderful electronics have manuals on how to use them. We have manuals for how we want other people to behave. And it's very precise, it's very detailed, and it's a book of rules and expectations of what a normal, kind, and what acceptable behavior is for somebody else in their interactions with us.
How do you think we come up with these manuals? Do you think it's a whole, like our whole life experience, like what we have been socialized to think by society, what we saw in our relationships at home growing up, maybe some positive or negative experiences we had throughout life? Is it a combination of all of those things that we've been socialized, been experienced, been trained to think, and those are the things that we project on how we think other people should act? And
Yeah,
this is with
absolutely.
everyone, right? This is like with our friends, our
Everybody.
children, our coworkers, our bosses,
Ourselves.
ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Our manuals come, I think it is a culmination of our experience in the world, like having, being younger and being, exposed to different relationships and how people, we have these thoughts that we're like, this person should act this way. Like, I think our morals come into play and our values come into play. And then, culturally, depending on, different cultures have different everybody has different manuals, but like just within a culture, right, there's different expectations on how people should act and behave based on that culture. Like if you're in an indigenous setting, like, I was blessed enough to be able to go to an I can't say that word, say that word three times fast. I can't. And I can't remember the people, but the tribe name, but it was off of Panama on a little island. And they had different, values and belief systems and morals and a code of ethics on how to live. And I think that's where it comes from is our environment and how we were brought up and our beliefs and what influenced us. And then there are some people, that I have a handful of people in my life that they didn't like what they were experiencing as children. And so they decided that they're going to do the complete opposite of that and change their life completely. Like they were brought up in what we would probably perceive as not a very loving, supportive environment. A lot of abuse, drug abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, those sorts of things, and viewed, realized I'm going to do the opposite of that. And so, yeah, Gabby, I think it is. That's what it comes from, just a whole array of our experiences. But a lot of times the manuals that we have for people, we don't tell them. They're unspoken. Like, like in your instance, you have told your husband, do the dishes.
Many times.
But what I'd like to offer is
Yeah. So tell me, what do I do? How am I supposed to be happy and satisfied when he
well,
doesn't do them? Like,
yeah,
how am I supposed to
yeah.
be?
Yeah, well, let me kind of go into like finish talking and like explaining to our listeners kind of like more about the manuals, and
Yeah.
maybe that'll come up a little bit later on. And if not, we'll do some fun like coaching on this, like for our listeners to get a little taste of what coaching looks like. Um, so, like I said, it's unspoken in a lot of times, right? Your manuals are unspoken. And what can happen is relationships just turn into people following each other's manuals. And that is the opposite of connection. So it's basically compliance at the control. It's compliance and control and not really true connection.
Mm,
Um,
mhm.
And so, just as an example, like I've heard stories of people, and in my own previous life, or I call it previous life, like I have this life that I absolutely love with my boyfriend Jason. It's so incredible and so just amazing and adult. It's so grown up. But in previous relationships, I've been in therapy, couples therapy. I've heard other people in couples therapy, and the therapist will go to them to ask, like, list the needs of what the other person should fulfill for them. And in this type of setting and this type of like therapy, you're putting that other person responsible to meet your own needs. But in reality, and I just feel like that like it sets up a relationship with rules and obligations and basically a job versus true connection. So, like for an example, Jason and I, like why I think our relationship is so amazing and it works so well and it's so adult-like is because at the beginning of our relationship, we decided that we did not want to take care of each other's needs, that we would take care of our own needs, and that we would simply enjoy each other's company. This has made an absolute like the change in our, just a beautiful relationship from the beginning. Like he is responsible for his own happiness. I'm responsible for my own happiness. And we get to just be together and enjoy each other's company. And it's just been a beautiful thing. And it doesn't mean that I don't ask Jason to do things and that he doesn't ask me to do things. It just means that the other person doesn't need to comply to my needs in order for me to feel satisfied and for me to meet my own needs. So if Jason doesn't do something I think I need or I want, I'll do it for myself. It's a win-win. And he doesn't spend his life trying to do things that he doesn't want to do. And then I learn to meet my own needs and take responsibility for my own emotions.
Can
And
you
so,
give an example of that for you and your relationship with Jason? Like, what is something that maybe you have asked him, I would prefer if you did or didn't do XYZ. And he responded with, that's not me. I don't do that, or I do this. And how do you, reconcile that? How do
where I
we
asked him,
reconcile
like,
that?
well, it's just
Yeah.
dropping a manual. So it's just like me dropping it. So I'm going to give like a whole big example. Like there's some comment for me, like in my manual, you should compliment me more. But I've not told him that, right? But I've learned to drop that. Like if he doesn't say how beautiful I am, not enough times that it doesn't mean that he doesn't love me and I'm not getting that need met.
Mm-hmm.
Or you should, as you all know, I have usually a very what could be considered restrictive diet for most of our culture, but I find it very freeing and but he should be supportive in my diet. And maybe not eat the things that I don't eat in my diet, or he should take out the garbage. He should do the dishes. And when he doesn't do the dishes, or I ask him to the dishes, how, Gabby, you're asking me like, what do I do in that moment? Then I realize like he doesn't have to do the dishes.
Mm-hmm.
He and I can be angry about it or I can be upset about it, but it only affects me being angry and being
Exactly.
upset about it. It's not going to change me reacting and throwing it, a fit about it and, trying to get him to do something that I want him to do is not, it's not a,
It's not productive, right?
it's not productive. I mean, you can do it, but the only person that's suffering, like you're suffering, and then
Yeah.
you're making that other person suffering rather than like adults get to be adults. They get to
Right.
do what they want to do. And you get to decide what you make that mean. Like, what do you make it mean when your husband doesn't do the dishes or when Jason doesn't do the dishes? Do I make it mean he doesn't care and respect about my time, or he thinks that, women should be in the kitchen, or, he thinks that his time is more important than my time, or he doesn't feel like doing it because he's tired and had a long day. He doesn't expect me to do it, and the dishes can get done tomorrow. Or, just whatever, like it's the thought that you're making. What are you making that mean that he doesn't do the dishes that upsets you so much? It's more than him just not doing the dishes. The manual is you do the dishes because then he's meeting a need of yours that
Exactly. I make it mean all of that. First, you don't listen to me. You never listen to me. Anytime I tell you to do something, you don't do it. But if your friend tells you to do it, or the neighbor's, cousin's brother tells you, oh, it's the best idea in the world, and then you jump on it, right away. Or because I'm a woman, because your mom used to wash your dishes and wipe your ass for you. You want me to do the same thing for you? No, that's not right. You need to learn how to be, a grown-ass adult in this house. All of the things, but you're right. Like you were saying, the only one that gets distressed about that is me, because of all of the things that I'm making it mean. Because in actuality, he has no clue. Yes, he was busy. He works just like I do. And actually, I could say that he probably carries a lot more of the household, responsibilities, because his job is a lot more flexible. So he does a lot of other stuff in between that maybe I don't think is as important, but is important to him. Like, gets all the oil changes done. He gets all the insurances taken care of. He takes the kids and picks them up, He takes care of his mom too. There's so many other things that sometimes the dishes are like bloop, lower on priority. And he's told me many times, like, oh, I forgot, or, oh, I was going to do them tomorrow. And then I get in my feelings about it. And then I get passive aggressive. Well, I'm not going to cook. I can't cook in a dirty kitchen. So you said you were going to do dishes. You didn't do them. Well, now I'm not going to cook. And then it makes it this like dramatic thing where experiencing it over and over for myself was only hurting me more than anything. And so it took some practice of thinking or dissolving my preconceived manual's thoughts of what I was making it mean that my husband should do. If I tell him to do it, I should only have to tell him once. And then he should do it and remember this over and over and repeat. And then when he didn't follow my instruction or my manual, like, we're calling it a manual, is my thought of how a husband should be, that I was making it mean all kinds of things. He didn't respect me. He doesn't love me the way I feel like needed to be loved. Or he's doing it on purpose to piss me off. He likes to piss me off. Or he feels that women should be the only ones that are in the kitchen cleaning. All those things I was making it mean. But then over time, it's kind of dissolving that and looking at it in a different way. And now it gets to the point where if they're not done, I don't make a big stink about it. It's my house. If I want to clean kitchen, then I got to clean it. And that's that. It gets done quickly, 5 minutes, done, move on with life. I'm at peace. I am not ruining my relationship over that, because he's not the one that's ruining the relationship because he's just not doing the dishes. I'm the one that's ruining the relationship because I make a big stink about him not following my manual. And yes, he's a grown man. He gets to choose if he wants to do dishes or not. And that's not a deal breaker. That's not a deal breaker in our relationship. Now, there would be other things where if he crossed a boundary, or there was something that was a deal breaker, for example, infidelity, right? That's something that is in my manual that I feel like me and my partner should be faithful, in our marriage. But if that was not followed through with, that would be something that would be a violation of our relationship. And I would really have to question whether it was worth it. But other things are simply, things that I can choose to look at it in a different way to make my relationship better. And the only one that has to work on it is me.
Right, right. And like your example of infidelity or other things, those are our brain automatically does go there because it like goes to worst case scenario.
Yeah,
And
of course.
that's not really the case. It's our day-to-day life that, comes into play. And what I heard you say is like your thoughts in those moments where like when he didn't do the dishes, like you never listened to me. That's a thought. He doesn't respect me. That's a thought.
Right.
Those were just your thoughts that you were thinking about him because he wasn't following your manual. And then what shifted for you, you dropped the manual of your expectations and what you did is you chose to think different thoughts and have different feelings about him not doing the dishes. And that's all that was.
Right. And at first it was conflicting because I thought it was being like delusional or not caring about something. Kind of like I was being the martyr here, like, oh my God, now I'm just being a pushover. I'm being a doormat, by accepting this behavior.
What about you, Elise? What do you think? Do you think she's being a doormat by accepting the behavior?
I don't think she's being a doormat, but I do think it's so easy to get into this trap with our minds. Like we all do it, right? My husband does, we're so 50-50 and we really do have a great partnership. Sometimes he's too clean for me. Sometimes I will be cooking and, I'll put a spoon down and I'll be doing something else. I'll go back to get the spoon and the spoon is gone because he's working behind me cleaning up as I'm going. And there have been times where I've had to kick him out of the kitchen. Like, you have to leave. You can't, like, and I'll be like mad about that. Like, who gets mad about their husband being too clean, right? I do.
You have the opposite problem.
Right, right. But I have had to really retrain my brain to say, what are you making this mean? He likes things clean. He likes things picked up. He doesn't like a mess. What are you making that mean? And it usually comes down to a judgment of myself. He's judging me. He thinks I'm messy. He thinks I'm not clean enough, whatever. But it's all made up stuff in my mind. So managing our minds when it comes to our manuals, it's so hard, but it's so critical to keep our relationship strong. And I love, Beth, you and Jason just have this wonderful agreement. You're not responsible for each other's happiness, and fulfillment and all of those things. And it really allows you the freedom to drop the manuals.
Right.
And dropping manuals it's just hard, but it makes such an important difference in the relationships that we have.
Yeah, I mean, it allows him to be who he is, and it allows me to be who I am.
Right.
And it is just so freeing. And I do have manuals for him, but then I check myself too. We're not perfect. Nobody is, and our relationship isn't, but my experience in other relationships, it's so much more fun to be able to just enjoy him for who he is and not want him to be different or change him in any way.
Right.
And, we talked about boundaries before, like manuals are different than boundaries. Like boundaries are like a violation of, like I can't.
Safety, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Right. And so, but the manuals, I have a list here that I think people could really like relate to. Like these are manuals to just really, if any of them ring true for you, as I say them out loud, just really think about what it is that how can it bring more connection and love and acceptance to your relationship if you just dropped this expectation of that other person and allowed them to be who they are and how they are, and you simply change your thoughts about it and ask yourself, what do you make it mean that they should be doing this? It's usually like you should. you know, you should take out the garbage. You should want to have sex more often. You should want to have sex less often. You should want to be home more. You should work less. You shouldn't look at other women. You should tell me how you feel more often. You should talk to me more. You should talk to me less. You should be in constant contact with me. You should make me happy in our marriage. You should wear more attractive clothing. You should remember my birthday and know what I want without me telling you. You should be more romantic. You should make more money. You should be kinder to my mother, and so on. And so when you drop the manual, your expectations, it boils down to this, like you're an adult, you get to be who you are, and I get to decide what I think and feel about it. And that it really takes the own, like you take your power back when you get to decide how you want to think and feel about it. You can still choose to think, like you don't have to like those things or accept those things. Like that's not what I'm talking about. And just like you said, like Gabby, just having him, being like a doormat, and that's not what we're saying at all. It's like take the ownership back, take your empowerment back, your power back, and really think about, like, is this thought or being angry or upset about this person not doing an expectation you have set for them worth the time and the energy and the emotional upset that you may go and, have to, you know, zone out about later on, or, have a drink to forget about, or eat a couple of cookies because you're pissed off and you don't want to feel pissed off anymore, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just think that it's such a life-changing concept to think about. Really, our relationship with other people is simply our thoughts about them. And something too that was so profound to me, like people that have died, like my relationship with my father is the best that it's ever been now that he's not here. I loved him when he was on this earth. Absolutely 100% loved him. My relationship with him is my thoughts about him, and my thoughts about him back then and when he was alive, and my thoughts about him now. And just because you have a relationship with somebody doesn't mean you need to see them in your life too. Like a lot of people have this conception, like manuals for themselves, like I should spend more time with, my cousin, my uncle, my sister, my brother, my father, my mother, my in-laws.
Right.
And it's not about that. It's your thoughts about that person that is your relationship with them.
That's
What do
so
you?
mind blowing. Yes. That concept. And it such a freeing, once understanding that concept of that a relationship is just your perception and your thoughts, whether they're alive or still in your life or not. That was such a freeing concept and way of really experiencing a relationship. And yeah, it's really amazing to think that it just takes you to have a wonderful relationship with someone. All it takes is you.
Yeah.
That's crazy to
Right.
me.
Yeah. Elise, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I love how freeing it is. I know when I learned about manuals and about relationships being our thoughts about others, that really, for me, that helped me love the people around me even more. Just helped me relax those thoughts, or put some context around them, that they are my thoughts, that they're not reality. And I feel like I have richer, deeper relationships. And more, I think the word you used was connection, Beth.
Yeah.
Definitely more connections, because I still struggle with it sometimes, of course. I want my mom to X, and I want my husband to Y, and I want my kids to Z, right? I still have those, but I know how to check them. And it's a work in progress. It's building a new muscle. It takes practice. We won't always get it right, but I do feel the power of it. And I think it's powerful.
Yeah, yeah, so powerful. And more time spent in connection, loving, encouraging each other, acknowledging each other versus trying to blame, shame, or change that other person. It's a beautiful thing. So thank you, ladies, so much. This is a great conversation. We could probably talk for hours about relationships. Maybe we'll bring up some more in later podcasts. But if you found this helpful or interesting, please do share it, like us, and review us, and maybe make some comments on any topics that you would like us to discuss and you would like to learn more of. Until next time, have a great, beautiful day. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, one more thing before we leave. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We are certified professional coaches, but this broadcast is not a substitute for medical or psychological advice. Okay, thanks for listening. See you next week.